Hello there ladies and gentlemen, TX141 here, also known as Paul, welcoming you to a brand new Ace in the Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. In today's instalment I shall be reviewing the P-39Q-5 Airacobra. Having already provided a brief historical overview behind the Bell Airacobra, which you may see using the link in the top right corner of your screen as displayed now, let us delve into the history behind the Q variant and the Q5 sub-variant depicted here today. We start by realising that the Q variant followed on from the N as the most produced and final production variant of the Airacobra, totaling 4,905 aircraft in the space of March 1943 to July 1944, before the Airacobra was succeeded by the Bell King Cobra. What is interesting is that a total of 9,529 Airacobra aircraft out of all variants were produced, which means that the Q accumulates to just over 50% of these aircraft. The original premise behind the Q was to use the same Allison inline V1710-85 E19 engine as in the N variant, a power plant providing 1,200 horsepower. On top of this, the same 87-gallon internal fuel tanks were to be applied, yet there were some differences. Firstly, there was a return to the original 231 pounds or 105 kilograms of armour plating. Moreover, the wing-mounted pair of 30 caliber Browning machine guns or 7.62mm in caliber were to be removed from the wings and replaced by a single 12.7mm Browning machine gun via an underwing mounting in a pylon. One 12.7mm machine gun was added to each wing with 300 rounds per gun. These two additions meant that the aircraft was slightly heavier by comparison with the N variant, and this was to form the basis of the Q1. The Q5 sub-variant saw additional fuel cells being added to increase the range of the plane, yet at the cost of reducing the armour plating mass available, reducing it down to 193 pounds or 88 kilograms, with a total of 950 Q5s being built. The P-39Q in general and the Q5 sub-variant were to see predominantly service on the Eastern Front in the hands of Russian pilots, whereby the dogfights were down at lower altitudes, and this meant that the P-39 Airacobra in general came to life as a brilliant dogfighter by comparison with the popular misconception of being used as a tank hunter thanks to that 37mm M4 cannon firing through the propeller hub. In the words of Nikolai Golodnikov, a Russian pilot at the time, the Q5 was the best fighter I ever flew. The visibility was brilliant, the armour very strong, and the cockpit was very comfortable. Indeed, a number of Soviet pilots managed to achieve A status while flying P-39Qs, including the Q5, and the pilots had a preference of removing the two 12.7mm Browning machine guns mounted under the wings and just using the combination of the single 37mm cannon in the propeller hub and the two 12.7mm machine guns based above the engine, as they found this armament was the most preferable, suitable and able to take down anything they went head to head with. And as a result, let us get into our gameplay for today. Our gameplay for today is taken from the airfield domination map Peleliu to the tune of the following setup. For the 12.7mm machine guns, I am using the stealth belts. The reason being that the combination of two armour piercing rounds followed by two subsequent armour piercing incendiaries can be quite brutal. The armour piercing rounds will usually cripple or expose vital surfaces such as the controls or the fuel tanks, and then the armour piercing incendiaries will finish off the job by setting my opponent on fire, leaving them to burn to a crisp. For the 37mm cannon, we're using the default belt as it comprises solely of high explosive fragmentation tracer rounds, which, upon instance on a target, will usually split the fuselage clean into two pieces, if not more, and the tracer allows us to correct for any inaccuracies. To top this off, we are using a 400m gun convergence, but this is not for any main reason. This is a standard gun convergence I use for any American aircraft that I employ in a boom and zoom fashion, especially if it is equipped with 12.7mm machine guns, such as depicted here with the two under the wings, and this means that I can bring those machine guns in to maximum effect if I so desire. And finally, we are using a 30-minute fuel load as per usual to make it to the end of the game. And so we begin this review by noting just how powerful the low to medium altitude performance of the Q5 is. We've gone from our initial spawn altitude of approximately 1,500 to 2,000 metres, all the way up to, as we will see, 3,500 metres altitude with little to no effort. And this quickly puts us into a position whereby we are the highest plane on the battlefield are, say, an enemy or a friendly bomber. And so the Allison engine works incredibly well in the first instance at low to medium altitudes, up to approximately 4,500 meters altitude when you will begin to feel a pinch on the engine. And by 6,000 meters altitude, the performance slides away so much that you'll be wishing you're flying a Messerschmitt 109 F4 for the performance. Nonetheless, we partially digress, and we can see an enemy Wellington and an enemy P-39Q-5 King Cobra both off in the distance. The King Cobra is going to try and fly towards myself and climb up underneath me, but now that we've instated ourselves in a higher altitude position, we're able to build up our speed to 440 km an hour very quickly, even when not using the WEP to full extent, and we can soon begin to dive down on the A5. And watch how much control we have here, especially with increasing speed. We're able to get our second shot onto target, achieving our first kill, only really using the 37mm cannon rather than the machine guns to do the damage, and we can then, thanks to very good energy conservation by comparison with the 600 km an hour speed we had when coming out of that dive to the 560 we have now, to close up on this C5 King Cobra that has knocked out a friendly SB2M. The King Cobra here probably did not know how to react due to the rapid convergence of my aircraft to theirs, and so my 5th round achieves a critical and my 6th 37mm round does the damage to achieve my second kill, before I brake round very sharply on the rudder to pursue down this Wellington Mark 1C who I dispatched with my first 37mm round. And so within the space of 30 to 45 seconds we can quickly summarise just how lethal the Q5 is with increasing speed. The tagline here is essentially agility comes with speed, and throughout that engagement we can see that in a speed range of 400 to 600 km an hour all the control surfaces come to life. The roll rate is decent, the elevator response is very good, and the rudder is absolutely brutal, although this does have some disadvantages as I will discuss shortly. More emphatically, in a speed range of 450 to 550 km an hour, you will find that this plane responds very well to any given input, whether it's on the rudder, as depicted there, or indeed on the ailerons and the overall elevators. Whilst your turn circle is not very good by comparison with, say, a Spitfire Mark 2B or Mark 5B, or that of an A6M2 Raisin, you are able to come about onto your opponents very quickly, and so if you overshoot your opponent you can have the choice of either zooming up and looping round or making a very wide turn in order to come around for a more brutal and more hopefully aimed boom and zoom style pass. And soon we note that there are no opponents up at higher altitudes, and so we go into a hammerhead and begin our descent at 3,800 meters altitude, partially switching off the engine to cool it down and then turn it back on to build up our speed. Looking around through the cloud layer we can see a number of enemy planes coming out of the spawn around by the ships, including this Yak 9T who is trying to climb up into the clouds. So we come down and our first shot goes right into their left wing, achieving a critical hit. You only usually need one 37mm round to go in, and even if it glances it will probably do enough critical damage to force your opponent to have to break off or eventually land. And as we can see here, thanks to our energy conservation once again, we can get away from the Yak 9T with no problems. And so as we fly back up to higher altitudes and through the clouds, we now have to consider the point I raised a little bit earlier, which is the performance of this aircraft at lower speed. I alluded to the fact that the rudder is incredibly powerful, and sometimes this is actually a problematic asset. And this is true within a speed range below 350 km an hour. The controls of the Q5 become incredibly sluggish and rather unresponsive in regards that once you input, say, to do a turn, this plane will take a very long while to actually respond and begin that turn. And on the rudder remains constant, i.e. still very powerful. But because you do not have the support of the rest of the control surfaces, sometimes you will find that the rudder will actually kick you into a spin, which is very difficult to get out of with decreasing speed. And so this is something to be very aware of, and as you will see, I will rarely use the rudder below a speed of 350 km an hour in this game, or in general with this aircraft. And this is a factor which is also attributed more recently to the N0 variant of the Airacobra as well. Nonetheless, having reconsolidated our position after the attack on that Yak 9T, we are now looking around for a new set of targets, and we can see that the enemy team over their airfield at A are forming into a nice train. We have a Typhoon, and we have a couple of other aircraft which I can't quite discern at the moment. And so, putting the emphasis on the enemy Typhoon here and the P-63 King Cobra below us, we begin our descent and gradually roll around into a boom and zoom. With increasing speed, especially above 650 km an hour, we are going to see that the control surfaces begin to lock up. We come down very close on that A10, almost colliding with them for our 4th kill. And then, looking around to make sure we have not got any pursuers coming after us, we realise that whilst we could attack that enemy Typhoon, we have a number of enemy aircraft now coming out of the spawn or around from the airfield that are trying to climb up after us, including the Yak-9. So it is not safe to continue, and we have the freedom to abort where necessary. And that is the pleasant thing about this Allison engine, that even on the level at low altitudes you can build up a lot more speed in terms of a maximum speed by comparison to those around you. It's been especially seen as the Yak-9 is prioritised for higher altitude performance, and the Focke-Wulf 190 will only start to really gain on you if they are up to about 3000 metres altitude in terms of the A1 or the A4 variant. So, moving on, we can see that this Focke-Wulf 190 Anton here is trying to fly underneath us. Now I cannot discern their motives for sure, but they are attacking a friendly P-39 or P-63 King Cobra. So at this point I decide to stay away, let the P-39N attack the Focke-Wulf, and at the same time I look towards this Yak-9, who for all I know could be climbing up underneath me. Especially seeing as I have the energy and the speed advantage on the Focke-Wulf, and they are nothing to worry about. And soon my fears are confirmed with this Yak-9 climbing up underneath me. It's the Yak-9T, I believe perhaps the one from earlier, and so here, performing a split S, we come down and around, but the Yak-9T pilot is smart here, and decides to break away as well. Now eventually, as our speed increases, we will not have the controllability in order to chase down that Yak-9T, and if they initiate a turn fight, we will not have the turn circle to match with them, so we have to abort as early as possible. As soon as the Yak-9 is just a little bit below 1500 metres altitude, it's pointless trying to chase them down any further, as then we put ourselves on an equal footing, and due to our close proximity with the enemy spawn, we're at too much of a risk. Yet when the Yak-9T comes up once again, this time we can achieve a couple of hits, most likely on their left wing, and so at this point we break up over them, and try and come back down on them for another pass. But here, due to the low speed of the Yak-9T, I have to take my time, and eventually I achieve my ace. Thanks to the fact that the Yak-9T's no longer got any energy left, and I can quickly line up a 37mm cannon shot. And so we can see here how I am putting my emphasis in the power of the 37mm cannon rather than utilising the machine guns. Indeed, I will only use the machine guns, quite importantly, once my 37mm cannon ammunition is out and I need to reload. Reason being, I can do a lot more damage with a single cannon than I can with the 4 machine guns in my opinion. It's unfortunate I just cannot give enough lead there on the Spitfire F Mark 9 in order to achieve my 6th kill. I was close, but I wasn't given that additional portion of lead that I required on the already present lead indicator. And that is an important fact to realise, that regardless of your ping on the server, in order to make sure that you can hit a target in a sharp high speed turn with a 37mm, you need to be given a small portion of additional lead on top of that the lead indicator demonstrates, as in most cases you will find if you do not, the 37mm round will graze the tail section of your opponent or miss entirely. Returning to the battle at hand, we see an enemy Yak-3 here, potentially climbing up after us, and whilst the Yak-3 is a very powerful performer at low altitudes, we have the speed from earlier, which we conserved, in order to continue on our way. The Yak-3 here seems to be in a climb, although I am unsure of which heading they're on, so I decide to go for a potential head-to-head, as I attributed the lack of speed in the Yak-3 after their climb as being a key factor in that portion of the fight. We then achieve a critical on a Wellington Mark 3 and knock out a Lag 3 trying to land on the airfield for kill number 7. Here I get as close as possible to achieve a critical hit on a Yak-3P, and that was with my last 37mm round. The Wellington Mark 3 goes into the ground very shortly, and the Yak-3, fortunately for them, gets a chance to land before my friendlies going for the fight, allowing me to achieve an assist. So we can see, thanks to the fact that our 37mm round was instant, the Yak-3P had to continue on their chosen path to land, even if there was not the ability to capture the airfield, because the damage would have been enough to force them to have to repair the plane. So sometimes you will not always get that one shot kill that you may desire, especially by comparison with say the Yak-9T's 37mm cannon, but at the same time, one hit will be enough to make your opponents reconsider their options. And so sometimes it is just better to get the critical rather than wonder where the kill went. And having climbed back up into the cloud layer, as the enemy team is pushing towards the B airfield now, and it is not safe for me to land, I decide to continue to look around and try to build up a little bit more speed, as speed is key to success in this plane, as already mentioned. And so looking around, I wonder whether I can actually capture the airfield at this point, seeing as the enemy team have decided to go back towards A rather than fly around the B airfield, especially now with additional friendly fighters in the frame. and I can see that the enemy Yak-9 has flown off towards the ships and is being pursued down by a friendly MiG-3. I instead opt to go after the Yak-9 here because I have a feeling that if the Yak-9 and the MiG-3 go head to head, they may crash, as they just did, or the Yak-9 would more likely knock out the MiG-3 quite cleanly. Yet, with those two ramming into each other, I instead opt for this Wellington. It's another Mark III, and whilst my second 37mm round is instant, it does critical damage to their tail, but it's not enough to allow me to achieve a 9th kill. And so at this point, I have to resign myself to the fact that the game is now at its end, and the Wellington is going to fly off into the distance, slightly harmed but not enough. And with that being said, let's just take a look at some post-game stats. Hence, we can see that our 8 kills and 2 assists allowed us to obtain 27,778 silver lions. On top of this, we earned 1,271 research points, with 381 going towards our work on the P-39Q-5 shooting star. We hereby conclude our review of the P-39Q-5 in the context of the previous variant, the N0. Now both planes are very similar in their overall handling characteristics and performance. Thanks to the fact they both have the same engine, they perform very well in a low to medium altitude range all the way up to 4,500 meters altitude, whereby beyond this, the engines begin to lose performance and the plane becomes a little bit motionless in the sky, especially by comparison with say a Messerschmitt 109 F4. In a speed range of 450 to 550 km an hour, this plane really excels, with the control surfaces being at their maximum responsiveness and allowing you to direct your fire onto a target with relative ease. Above 650 km an hour, the roll rate begins to lock up, and below 350 km an hour, the controls in general become sluggish, yet the rudder remains incredibly powerful. And this is a danger, as 1 or 2 sharp moves on the rudder at low speed may cause you to enter a spin which you may not recover from. However, the difference between the Q5 and the N0 stems from the change in armament and the overall handling nature of the two planes on a microscopic level. I personally feel, thanks to the additional fuel load of the Q5 and the armament change, that the Q5 is a heavier plane, and whether this is actually reciprocated historically I do not know, and so I'd be grateful to anyone who has such information available. But I personally feel the Q5 handles a lot more heavily by comparison with the N0, and so if I took the two planes into the same game and I was forced to make some sharp manoeuvres or even enter a turn fight at high speed, I would feel much more confident in the N0 by comparison with the Q5. As whilst I may not have those 2 additional 12.7mm machine guns in my wings, I have the ability to dodge the incoming fire much more effectively. And so with the Q5 I feel as though I am compelled into maintaining a sole energy fighter state of mind. Meanwhile the N0 I have a little bit more flexibility and versatility to not always have to play in the vertical but also sometimes in the horizontal. However, this is just my opinion, and this is on a very small scale. If you took a macroscopic view of the two planes, they are very similar and they are built around that single 37mm M4 cannon, with the machine guns in reserve to knock out opponents when you do not have access to those high explosive fragmentation tracer rounds. And as we can see by comparison to the rest of our team, we came first. Not by a huge margin, but because we stuck to our overall game plan of occupying the medium altitude space and denying it for both the enemy bombers and the enemy fighters who may have used it to manoeuvre themselves into a position over the friendly airfield. When we went down to lower altitudes, we always went into the fight and went out of it just as quickly. We never stayed around to turn fight or to expose ourselves to any incoming opposition. As a result, if you're a pilot who enjoyed the N0 variant, or someone who's looking for an energy fighter with the one-shot wonder capabilities to rival the Yak-9T, then look no further. The Q5 may be the fighter for you, although be aware, it is an incredibly linearized fighter by comparison with its predecessors. And so I've been TX141, and if you've enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. Yet until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and good luck in the skies!